Hey, I've been seeing that you've been busy with hitting up art shows and things like that.
Yeah, just last week I saw Milton 510.
I
He
remember him.
was in town. Yeah, he was in Sacramento celebrating like his 20th anniversary with Sacramento and working with Kevin Johnson. And then I saw Karen Walker's exhibit at the you saw that one at the MoMA.
I've been to her exhibits before. They were a lot.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
knew
you
when she
can't.
first started out, and I was just like, and it was just kind of like part of me respected it as an artist, but part of me as being a Black person, I was kind of offended and trying to find my place in it. Like, okay,
Mhm.
she was one of the original people that I had to tell myself that it's just not for me. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's not bad. It's
Mhm.
not for me. She was the originator of that for me feeling that way and being like, I don't have to. I don't have to take it personal. It's just not. It's just not for me, and I don't have to make it reconcile. It's just not for me. It's as simple as that.
Right, right, right.
But she taught me that.
It's understandable. The first time I saw her was in New York at the Studio Museum of Harlem.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of walking down the street. I might have told you the story before. We went to the Apollo and they had a reception across the street for something else, but
Mm-hmm.
we went inside and her exhibit was up and it was like, wow. And I had the kids with me, so it was kind of like,
Oh,
yeah, they were pretty young too. So it was interesting
yeah.
to kind of see that exhibit. And they didn't ask any questions, but still, we kind of, walked through it kind of quickly
Yeah,
and went
because
back on our own, without the kids to see it.
yeah,
So, yeah.
because it's kind of hard to take in because it's so innocent and simple, right? It's like cutouts, right? It's like shadow puppets, right?
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
so powerful. So she found a brilliant vehicle to express herself. And it's not easy, right? You know, you got to have the perspectives and all that kind of stuff and the sides and all that kind of stuff. So she's very talented. But it's amazing how something so simple could be haunting. It could be very telling, very engaging. It's all this stuff, and it's just paper cutout. So that's genius. The vehicle and the idea and all that kind of stuff, and then her edge that she puts on it too. That's just it's brilliant. But it's not for me. But it's brilliant.
Because I posted some stuff on Instagram. She's doing a robotic kind of exhibit this
Oh,
summer.
yeah, I saw your thing on Instagram, and it's funny because
Hmm.
I didn't realize that was her work, but I should have known because it was like 3D, but it was like a black
Hmm.
silhouette. And I think you made a comment about it looking at another piece of
Yeah.
artwork.
Right, 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 right. It just seems kind of odd. You know what
Like
I
a
mean? It's
side
just kind of
eye and all
funny.
the art.
Like,
Right.
yeah, it was because she did have the side eye, and it was like she's checking out this other person over here, this other
Yeah.
piece of art over here. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting.
Your commentary definitely added to the image.
I
Yeah.
think that one got the most likes too. Like, you know
I
what I mean?
bet.
It was more relatable. So it was actually pretty funny. But yeah,
I
yeah,
thought it was pretty good.
it's
I thought
interesting.
it
Yeah.
added to the experience. I think that's pretty dope.
It's funny because I saw this film first. That's what started the whole art kind of journey for the week because I saw this film and saw the two artists like right after that. So I had a good art week, good
That's
three
good.
days of art. So yeah.
Yeah. That's right on. That's right on.
Hmm.
All right, so with that, let's start our review.
Let's get it.
He gave me you, Terrell. He was my first love. Was my first love.
Hey, you got flaws, Terrell. Ain't you got flaws? I'm not the same man you used to know before, Terrell. That's what you said, right? Why are you still making excuses for him?
If you don't forgive others of their past sins, then you can't be forgiven.
Have you asked yourself once, one time, what's best for us? For him, for your grandson?
This ain't about him. It's about Mama.
What we do, what we do, brick by brick, that's how we move.
I put it on canvas so that I could hold it by the throat.
Foundation built with bricks that we were never given.
It's Jay. I'm back in for another one. And this evening I have with me
Sebrenia.
Welcome back, Sebrenia. How are you?
Good. How are you, Jason? Long
I
time no see.
I know it's been too long, but if we coming back together, we must have something to talk about. It's funny. For a minute there, we had a good roll of, I guess, black movies, for
Mm-hmm.
lack of a better word, back to back to back, and I guess we're kind of continuing on with that kind of conversation lane with Exhibit and Forgiveness, the new movie that is new to theaters. It's kind of fleeting. It kind of came in and kind of went. This is a movie that I saw a trailer for, and I automatically got warning signs like, it'll be interesting, but I don't know if I want to get into it. Part of me did because, it's art and about an artist and stuff like that, and a father, which things I can relate to. Things about family, and I can relate to that too. And sometimes with these kind of movies, I have to be mentally ready for. It could be a lot, Us artists, we're very sensitive, and we could take things a certain kind of way. So when I saw it, I was thinking like, I kind of want to check it out, but I don't really know if I want to check it out. It looks heavy, and I don't know how heavy it's going to be, especially with the family stuff and the connections with like a long lost parent trying to come back and all this other kind of stuff. And so I didn't know what to expect exactly, but I kind of knew in the vein of what it would be. And so I saw that and I was thinking like, okay. And then I just like noted that it's coming out. I'm not going to trip about it. I went to go see another movie. Somebody else said they had saw and asked me, did I see it? And I'm like, is it out already? And it's like, yeah, because I saw it like advertised once or twice. And so it came. And then you hit me up and said you had saw it. And I was like, oh, I mean, I'm watching it. I guess tag I'm in. So I guess I'm watching it. And so I went to go try to watch it at my local theater, and it was no longer there. So I'm like, okay. And then there's a couple of places that it was playing that was about an hour away. Either choice I had was going to be 30 minutes to an hour away. And I'm not one to kind of complain about driving because I like driving anyway. It was a cool experience. I went to go get some food from a restaurant I like. But yeah, so did that, and now we're here to discuss it. How'd you first hear about this movie?
Probably on social media, just seeing it pop up, and when it said exhibiting, it had me. The forgiveness part was like, oh, that's going to be interesting. So right away, I knew it was something equated to art. So I knew I wanted to see it. So it's interesting because when I mentioned it to you, I mentioned that it was in your city at that time. Mm-hmm. So it was only in the theaters for like a week, basically.
Right.
So I still don't get that. I still don't get that, that it disappeared that quickly, especially in two areas that you could kind of, if I missed it by me, I could go down to, your area and watch it. And they were both gone pretty quickly. So that was disappointing. Very disappointing.
And it wasn't even advertised well. Like I think I came across the commercial on social media as well. And the funny thing about it is, the only way I would see a movie like that is if I was seeing another quote unquote black movie to tell me about it. They wouldn't put that in front of all the other movies that's in the theater, which they should. It shouldn't be. Okay, I understand like kind of cross-pollination. Like if you've seen a superhero movie, they'll show a trailer for another superhero movie. I understand that. But that's too easy. People who like that popular movies stuff, people look and seek and find those anyway. They'll see it 50 times on YouTube looking for that trailer. So they don't really need the assist of showing another trailer of that. So instead of showing me AT&T commercials at the movie theater, which we shouldn't have to see when you pay money to go there, start showing all these different trailers for different types of movies because you don't know who is going to hit. They're the ones who need the advertisement. M&Ms don't need it.
Right.
All these other, commercials that you would see on TV. I'm talking about regular commercials. I'm talking about trailers and nothing like that. I ain't talking about popcorn stuff. I'm talking about commercials that sometimes you see in the theater. Put in these movies so people can see what's going on. Because if you're just going by the type of movies that you're seeing there, being advertised similar movies, and the movies types that you're seeing isn't hardly shown, then those trailers that have movies that are similar to those, you won't see those either.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like this hard cat and mouse game. Like, like independent films, you like that. You only see a trailer for an independent film when you see an independent film. So either you're in the club and you're looking for it or you're not. And it'd be nice to have something like, hey, I wasn't looking for that, but it's nice to see that exists. It doesn't hurt. Mm-hmm. So it's just like, it's funny how the system kind of makes its own problems in a way, and how it's so important for you to seek stuff that you like, because a lot of times it's not going to be fed to you. So it's going to be a job to find things you love and things that you might be interested in. You definitely have to
Right.
put in the work to find the things that you do like.
Right. And then gotta hope that it's worth it once you accomplish that as well.
Good point. It seems like there's been a lot of quote unquote black movies like lately, like on Netflix and like Amazon Prime and stuff. So I'm glad to see that it's not just a February thing, that we're seeing more kind of things come out. As far as the quality or the stories and all that kind of stuff, that could be questionable. But we can't say that it's necessarily a drought. But like you said, you never know if it's something that's going to touch you or something that you're going to not like. So it's interesting. So let me do a synopsis for the Exhibiting Forgiveness. Okay, so a black artist on the path of success is derailed by an unexpected visit from his estranged father, a recovering addict desperate to reconcile. Together, they struggle to learn that forgiveness might be a greater challenge than forgiving. And it's directed by Titus Caphart.
I'll say that, yeah.
And it's also written by him. Stars Andre Holland and Audra Day.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know, but I figured, but I didn't know that Titus was an artist. So to find out that he was an artist, it kind of made sense after seeing the movie, because him being an artist definitely lent to the storytelling. I'll say that.
Mm-hmm.
I will say we're going to do non-spoiler discussion first, and then we'll get into spoiler stuff. So overall, what was your thoughts about the movie?
I thought it was great. I mean, it wasn't what I expected. I did think it was going to be a lot more art based. Like I was going to see more of the process, and there was a lot of that shown, but I was looking for a little bit more with that. Didn't expect it to be what it was. Didn't expect the focus to be on what it was, but it was very impactful. Kind of sent me down a rabbit hole of, just kind of thinking about some things for myself, in a sense of like relationships wise, and how you cultivate those and how you make strong decisions on, whether it's worthy of, working with or leaving it alone. So I thought it was good. I would probably watch it again, probably at home, just because I'd like to see it again at some point. So when it comes out, streaming wise, I'll probably watch it again.
Okay. For me, I had mixed feelings about it. So I was really taken back by it, the subject matter. Part of me was intrigued. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what to expect, but it wasn't quite what I thought. Like you, I thought it's going to be about a painter meeting his father, and that's going to be an issue. I thought it's going to be more about his relationship with his lady, and then also with him being a father and things like that. More like parallels of things repeating itself or something like that, or the struggle of being an artist, because it also kind of showed, he's pretty famous artist trying to balance things out. So I was kind of looking forward to that, but I didn't want to, some of the drama stuff with his family and stuff, I wasn't necessarily looking forward to, but I was interested to see how it's going to be. And it's going to be heavy. I know how heavy. And like I said, I didn't know the parts it was going to lean into. And the parts I thought it was going to lean into, it didn't.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, after watching it, I was kind of like, I didn't love it. I had a lot of issues with it, but then also upon reflection and kind of like just chewing on it for a while, I started thinking about all the beautiful moments that was expressed through the movie, and the things that that came up and how things were dealt with was pretty interesting. So for me, just as much as it had stuff that kind of threw me off, it had a lot of beautiful things that made me appreciate it. Because I definitely had to talk myself down and be like, just because I might not relate to how something is being told, it doesn't mean that it's not valid. And so it would just be a thing that either is for you or not. But I was kind of like, a lot of it was kind of hard for me. And and some of it, I think, was also due to subject matter, also due to the audience that I watched the movie with. I think that played into a part of it too. And sometimes I wish stuff like that didn't play a part and stuff. And that's something we could talk about later on. But it's just interesting, just us, being black and how that plays into normal things like watching a movie.
Right.
All the extra that even that plays into even watching entertainment. Like that's a factor. Like that's on top of the sandwich that's already made is blackness. And not to say that everybody feels the same about things, but you know, we talked about that before about kind of like, you know, you could feel kind of not necessarily embarrassed, but kind of like you wouldn't want certain things said or shown in mixed company because you know they don't know the context. So likely it's going to be like, if that's the example, then don't show example at all kind of situation. So I don't know if I would watch it. I might watch it. I might just watch it again just because after I did think about it and thought about the parts I did like, it didn't change the stuff I didn't like, but it balanced it out for me. And so I was glad that I was able to do that. But I thought the part that was shown as far as like an artist and the creation and how things work like that, I thought was spot on. And it would only be an artist that could express that. So when I found out, like I said, the director writer was an artist, I was like, that makes sense, because a lot of stuff I recognized and it just kind of gave me goosebumps on part of it, kind of like made me laugh on some of the other stuff, but it was quite relatable in a lot of ways. So it was cool. So I'm glad I saw it, but the whole thing was a journey.
Right.
So we could get into the spoiler part of it. What are you feeling?
Well, I would speak to the first thing that stuck out to me.
Okay.
Well, it wasn't the first thing, but it's the thing that stays in my mind is, I guess, his manager, you know, came to the studio.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Let's just have a little pause for that for a second, because that was disturbing. You know what I mean? Like, no means no. Like, you know, you've come in here bearing gifts. You know, I don't want you to cross the threshold because this is my, you know, safe space and the place where I process everything. And you step over it, and then you walk into the studio and you proceed to tell me what to do with the work that I'm doing.
You didn't like how Janine moved around the studio?
I did not like it. And I also felt like it was giving me like a benefactor vibes. Like I was thinking about like Zora Neale Hurston. And I saw a play recently where it was based on, you know, her dealing with someone who was giving her money. You know, and her documentary speaks to that, you know, and it's very deep in that sense of how they had to accept funding, you know, from folks that, you know, had the money, that happened to be white folks. You know what I mean? So when she walked in after he basically said, please don't come in, I'm processing, you know, I'm doing my thing. And she just kind of made her way in there and then proceeded to tell him, oh, this is good. You don't need to do anything else with this work. You know, you need to stop right here and sell it. It was
disrespectful,
bad, you know. Yeah, it was. As an artist, like, you know, you kind of gasp a little bit, like, what? You know, like, is this how it works? You know, that you could just invade someone's space and then tell them, you know, exactly what to do with the work that they're doing. So, you know, I saw he did resist it a lot, and then he kind of gave into it, you know, towards the end. Not a whole bunch, but that was disturbing to me to see that. That was disturbing.
Yeah, a lot of times with artists, especially if you're a successful artist, even with those, you kind of got to keep the ball rolling. So it's never like you have enough to just sit back and do what you want to. So you're always kind of on the chain, and you're always kind of, you know, got to keep going, got to keep moving. You can't be out too long because they'll find somebody else to have interest in and all this other kind of stuff. So it's kind of awful when you are stuck in that kind of thing when it's your art versus just a job. And it's almost kind of like if I was ever going to get, you know, ran like that, it would be on some job versus my art. That means a lot to me. So it's like if I had to choose to do something else and then be creative when I want to be creative, it would be that, because I personally couldn't go through that. And I thought it was very well done the way that was shown. Now, does it go like that for everybody? Not necessarily, but it's something to that. It spoke to the situation and how even if you're successful, you still don't have control. And somebody still is the gatekeeper, even of your own experiences or your own expression. You know, they'll let you know if that expression is good. They'll let you know if it's valuable. They'll let you know, not even asking what you think of it, but they'll let you know. For all we know, that work he wasn't even going to show. He was just trying to get that. He's trying to exercise that out of his soul, and she just wanted to make it a candy bar. She wanted to make it a product, and he didn't even see it like that. And one thing I thought was so beautiful, and it reminded me of it, is like when you saw this piece that you thought was done, and then you see him not being able to sleep, and he wakes up in the middle of the night, and he comes in, and he walks in, and he had these three boys are the main characters that's on the structure in the front of the painting, the house in the background, and he comes out and he X's out two of the boys with this white paint. You know, I thought that was powerful. I've done stuff like that where I created something and ripped it up, and then just glued it back together, or just kind of like that was very powerful. And the fact that he couldn't sleep, like I had times like that where I couldn't get rest and I needed to just get up and finish or do something to the piece, even though technically it was done, but it's not done until your soul tells you it's done, and you got to do what you got to do to make it right. And I thought, even if somebody sees that or perceives it as destruction or defacing or whatever, it's not about what they think. It's about how you feel about it and making sure it lines up with what you see for that piece. So I thought it was very powerful, and I'm glad that it showed him waking up to do that and to do something that could seem destructive, but it really wasn't. Like I could relate. And I thought that was powerful, and I don't know if I've quite seen it shown like that in a movie with an artist kind of doing that kind of thing. And if so, it's been a while since I've seen something like that. So it really spoke to me, that part. And like with his agent Janine and her just her kind of crossing the line with all of it, even her sitting too close to him, even all of it, you know what I mean? Like, and it's funny because even his wife was almost kind of like even screwed the money, like she's an artist too. She like, it's my turn, what about my situation or whatever, you know what I mean? So I thought that was kind of realistic too, versus just like, oh honey, whatever you need or whatever. Like, no, I got mine too. I'm talented too, I gotta express my turn, and the juggling that sometimes relationships you would have to do, because you maybe all can't, do it at the same time because of, life be lifing. They had a young child as well, and they're trying to, but it seemed like they're doing pretty well. But it definitely did also feel that, you can't really not be successful. You kind of keep it going. So, what would that mean if he did? And that's what I thought the movie's going to be about too. What does that mean if you do, he's hot right now, is working out, and what if he did step away so his woman could do her music? And even though she's very talented, what if it doesn't kick off? And then what happens to what's been built so far by him? You know what I mean? So all that stuff. And that's what I kind of thought the movie was going to be about, but it kind of didn't touch on those things. It was almost like she was kind of used to be the soundtrack of the movie, which I thought was the best part of the movie. But I thought we would get more of her and her journey and how their journey as artists paralleled and stuff like that. I thought it would be, because that whole movie could have been about her on her side of it, or a nice combination between the two would have been interesting to see, and how they work their relationship with their love for art and find their place in the world with their art and with each other. So
I definitely agree with that, because I went in there thinking, oh, this is going to be a movie about an artist, and like I said, we'll see the process and all of those things. And then to find that his wife was a singer was like, oh, this is interesting. And they're successful. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you have one that has, the regular 9 to 5, and the other one is the artist. And for them to be, successful as a pairing, and it looked like, from their home that they were living well. It looked like his studio was like an airplane hangar. It was so huge. That was one thing I marveled at. Like, wow, this is incredible, So it would have been nice to see how that works. Like you said, like how does this whole thing work together?
Right. I thought it was gonna be an artist rendition or version of Love and Basketball. You know what I mean? I thought it was something like that. Like they both love the art, but then how they fit with each other. So I thought it was gonna be something like that. But yeah, we had Audra Day. She played Aisha. Man, her voice. But I've been loving her for a while anyway. But like I said, that music was the heart of that movie and the saving grace. Because I did have some issues with the dialogue. I did have issues with kind of tropiness of the situation with the mom, with the dad, with the mom, dad, and son, Terrell. It was just, at times, it felt like it was a whole bunch of stuff that needed to be expressed. Sometimes the song could be too busy because it's just trying to do too much, or the artwork could be too busy because you're trying to dump everything. But sometimes certain things, certain subject matters need space and not clutter, because sometimes the clutter can lead to the confusion and all the other kind of stuff. So I just think it was like a whole bunch of different movies kind of jammed into one, and it was just too much for one movie. And the way it was expressed was kind of rough, and some of that would be due to being new. Like, you might be a good painter, but you know restraint with painting, but with singing you might not know restraint, or making a movie you might not know restraint. You might think, this is the movie of my life, I got to put everything in it. And for me, I kind of felt like that, because if this same premise was done by Spike Lee, it would have been a whole different movie.
Yeah, that's a good point, because the placement of it, I mean, we're in the spoiler part of this, right? So the placement of the father in the very beginning was just like, what is this? Like, who is that? You know what I mean? So like, I think, for a while, just to kind of sit there and try to figure that part out took some time. You know what I mean? Like, how is this whole scene related to what we came here to watch? Like, who's the artist? Is this guy, is this the artist, but this is him as he's older? You know what I mean? It's too much of a thought process to try to figure out who that person was. Whereas maybe if it started off with the artist and he was having those conflicts that he was having, and then introducing the father afterwards, is like, okay, we get it,
Yeah, it depended a lot on flashbacks and then out of context storytelling. You got to be really good at that to pull it off. Otherwise, you could just lose somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was an interesting way to start. Like you said, you kind of get a little bit of idea of Terrell, and he's an artist. And I'm thinking, like, it's cool. He got his woman. She's an artist too. Got his little son and stuff. Like you say, got his dope studio, which is amazing. He got this huge canvas and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, man, that's beautiful. Like, that's a dream right there, right? And so you see this guy that's, homeless, kind of washing cars, and you're like, how does this relate? He's helping out this guy. This guy gets robbed, and he gets beat up trying to help this guy that got robbed. And you're like, how is this? And then where's he going? And I'm thinking, like, oh, he's going to go to his son. This is where I guess it's going to tie in together. And it's like, oh, it's not his son. This is the guy's brother. And I'm like, okay, so is this the same story, or is it a parallel thing? And then he's like, hey, nephew. I'm like, okay. Oh, he is related to the main character. I just wasn't for sure, because they kept taking all these different. I met his uncle, the main person. We took such a long route to get to him, and how that was connected, and it was just kind of like, I don't know. Part of me felt like I needed kind of more, either him working out his piece with his dad or not. Yeah, because the way it was, and then it's just funny how they make you feel bad for his dad. And then you kind of feel like, okay, Terrell's kind of rough on his dad. He just, it's just the typical thing where the dad is out of his life, and now he's trying to come back because he's changed his life, and the kid don't want to let him back in, and eventually his heart going to get warm, he's going to let his dad in, all this other kind of stuff. And you see the guy get beat up at the beginning, and he was trying to save a guy and help out a guy that, that he washed his cars for, just for change. And then to have a flashback of craziness with him, it's just like, you want me to hate him again? Or like, I didn't. It was just so harsh. And I'm thinking, like, okay. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but
right.
But it was just a lot. It was very, I would say, tropey, but that's when I had to back off and be like, you know what? This might be this guy. And it was, I was upset by some of the stuff that was happening with him and his dad and him and his mom. And, even stuff irritated me where, it's a situation where his mom, I guess, needed to move because it was dangerous, and her son is a well-to-do artist, so he got money to move her out. And he's saying, like, hey, we're going to finalize everything. Just pack your stuff. We're coming down there to come get you, and we're going to, and he gets there and nothing's packed, and she's talking sideways. I don't want to leave. And I'm thinking, like, didn't they have a whole conversation? If he's preparing, you know what I mean? Like, he would have known before he got there. It's not like it wasn't discussed. So say she didn't want to. He wouldn't think she had boxes and ready to go and get there and then be surprised like that. You know what I mean? Like, she seemed bold enough to tell him everything else. I think she would have the wherewithal to tell him she don't want to leave over the phone.
That was pretty uneven.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, and then go ambush him with his dad too. And I'm like,
Well, I mean, initially when he said you haven't packed anything, she said it won't take long, and I was like, "You got a whole house to
House,
pack. Like what? Looks like it's upstairs and downstairs. I don't know. It's
right?
a huge house." So
And so
that
how she wouldn't have
was,
no movers or nothing? Like,
yeah,
the scenario didn't add up to me. I didn't buy
right,
it. I didn't buy it.
right, right.
So to me, it's just like, I don't know how to make this come together, but I'll just say this. And so if that's what I'm saying, some of the writing was just kind of like, they just need to be at that point. But the way it got there, and a couple things in the movie, it was kind of like, let's just do this. And parts of it reminded me of like I said, it kind of reminded me like if Tyler Perry wrote something and Spike Lee shot it.
It was beautiful.
That's what I'm saying. It looked like Spike
Yeah,
Lee shot, but some of the writing stuff, it just wasn't. It was a weird mesh, and because some of the moments, like the painting of an old gentleman that you didn't know was his father, kind of turned into a real life picture of the guy, who, stuff like that. Just the way the art was introduced and things like that, and how he saw the world, and you could see that he had night terrors, so you could see he was traumatized by something, but they never really said what. And at first you thought it wasn't so bad, then it got extreme later on, and his kid didn't know about it, but how would his kid not hear him punching through walls and screaming? How would that be the first time he heard it at the hotel while visiting the parents? That's the first time your kid, like, you got PTSD, you got something going on, man. So ain't no way the neighbors wouldn't call the cops on you. How would they not even hear it? So for the kid to be scared and he thought he was hiding it and talking about where I'm fine, some of that stuff, like I said, it was just uneven with some of that stuff. Like I said, and some of the stuff, and with the mom too, and I'm thinking like, okay, this is modern. I know it could be, possibly in the South, I guess, or I think she's in Atlanta, but it was just still, it's like if I would close my eyes, it could have been like a slave movie to me. I still love my man, and I'm like, if I closed my eyes, I wouldn't have known what I would have questioned. I would expect them to be in rags, working in quarters for some of that stuff if I had closed my eyes and didn't know what movie I was watching. And so I felt a little cringy for some of the dialogue and stuff. And like I said, it didn't help that, other folks was in the theater watching too. And when stuff was happening, they were like, oh, and I wanted to say out loud, like, this don't happen to all of us. All your oohs and ums and ohs. I'm like, please don't lean into this, because this is not normal. And don't think that we're sitting up in here and think it's normal, because I don't. I'm kind of offended myself, but I can't tell somebody what their story is. So this could be true for somebody. This could be something leaning towards the writer and director of it. This could be his story, which I found out later on. He kind of said it partially was, but kind of wasn't, all that kind of stuff. I'm like, and it's about being Black. We have a different guidelines that we can do whatever we want to first, as far as anything, whatever. But also, we just always got to keep in mind, whatever we do, it has a spotlight on it. And whatever we say, it is taken as we're the only ones saying it. So even if you start talking about you, it's being taken as it's talking about all of us. Especially when it's some nonsense or some crazy stuff. Now, if it's something good, it's just that magical Negro. But if it's something bad, it's all y'all.
You said it.
And I'm just hearing, ooh, that happened, or ooh, that poor. And I'm thinking like, please don't walk out this theater looking sad at me as if that happened to me, or I can relate to that, because I cannot. At least not like that in that way necessarily. And it was just like, man, and I just like, man, I don't know.
So if we took it kind of like in a piece by piece thing, like I think with the parents, for her to still feel the way that she felt, I didn't really feel like, well, what's the reasoning behind it? You know what I mean? Because from the flashbacks of the way that he treated, the child, and they were kind of going through it in the sense of him taking care of the child. And, when he first started, when he got hooked on drugs,
No, because I ain't heard this in a long time, and I didn't think I was gonna be in 2024 hearing somebody
Right.
saying they was on crack.
Mm.
They used the
Yeah.
word crack, crackhead in a modern movie. Okay, now he thought, this is what he telling his son, he thought that he was on crack and nobody noticed because he was a functioning crackhead, right?
Mhm.
Right? Now you can say it to a little kid maybe, wondering why daddy acting funny. But you got a whole wife who works and sleeps next to you. I would think that she would know you were on crack.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't understand inappropriate touch or something. Not like how you do that to me, made me, cut grass with a scarred foot. That's a big difference. They're both bad, but I was a little bit relieved that that's all it was, him stepping on a nail and being hurt and cutting grass, than him possibly being touched. But I didn't like how that was even left out there as an option for a problem.
Well, he even said, one time he mentions, how could you leave me with him? And you knew. So that probably is one of the reasons why you thought that too. Because it's like, like you're thinking it's something where something occurred in the privacy of just the two of them.
Right.
But
and then we get the flashback and it shows you what it is. I'm thinking, I know. And as devastating as that was, and just like, to the point where I didn't believe that somebody would do that. There are messed up folks who do stuff, but I didn't believe it, that would have occurred.
Mm-hmm.
And as crazy as that was, and I didn't even believe that, I was fine with that versus, them saying that he was messing with that kid in that way. So I took it, even though it wasn't a better option. I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'll take that then.
Did you notice the day that they went out to work, how he got up, got dressed, he looked enthusiastic, like, perhaps it was like, oh, I'm going to work with my dad, I'm going to hang out with my dad for the day.
Yeah.
And up to the time that his foot, he stepped on that nail, he was working hard. You know what I mean?
Yes, he was. Yeah.
And his father was treating him pretty decently. He was driving him, but when he got harmed and his father reacted the way he did, to me, it was that drug fuel. It was like, we got to get this money because at the end, I'm getting ready to get my drugs. You know what I mean? And so the fact that he said, oh, and he was even like, okay, I sacrificed my foot and we got this money. And he was like, Dad, what are you doing with this money? We getting ready to go home.
Yeah.
And he's like, mind your business, and takes him with him to buy the drugs. It was like a high, and then a high for us as an audience member to be like, oh, this is like they're bonding, to like the ultimate letdown in the end. Like his foot's messed up and he just gave away this money. He didn't even give the boy, his son, any money,
But that was kind of the whole movie was kind of like off and on like that. And that's what kind of threw me off. And that's what I'm saying. Like, that couldn't have been the first day that kid realized something was wrong with his dad, or the mom's first time knowing something was wrong with his dad. You know what I mean? It was just, I don't know. Not that people can't just click like that, but so that was the first and last time that happened?
There's a gap.
You know what I mean?
What happened after? Yeah.
It was, like I said, but that's where a seasoned writer would see that and be like, you know what, we gotta work this out. Like I said, you can have all this stuff in here if you want to, but it gotta be laid out differently or something, because you're kind of even destroying what. And I see another movie that was recently that was also a first-time writer director. I saw the movie Blink Twice, and I had some of the same issues with this movie where the storytelling, like you're stepping on your own foot. It's like you got to choose a path, and you got to kind of lay out the groundwork for this stuff. You can't have it where, you're building on the same ground, because it's not space for everything. And everybody want to do everything and be slick and creative choices. Like, you have to have wisdom and know what you're doing to get away with the tricks and the stunts and stuff. Otherwise you get hurt. And sometimes, you just want to do too much and it's just not enough room for all of it. And if you would have just left it without the extra stuff, it would have went by fine. But when you have so much on it, it's weighted down so much that it kind of loses context. You don't know who to root for. Like, you may not like it. Everybody could be bad guys, but one of those bad guys got to be the hero. That's just how stories go. somebody got to be your point of reference. Good, bad, or indifferent. Like I said, even if there's 20 bad guys, it's gonna be one guy who's gonna be better than the rest of them that you're gonna root for. That's just how that goes. But I'm in there kind of looking at everybody sideways. Everybody guilty.
Right.
For me, I'm like, I'm not trying to be funny. I'm serious. I'm like,
no, but it is. I get what you're saying because, I want to say, did we see, him evolve? Meaning the son, did he evolve into something better? I mean, in the end, did he?
We didn't know him to know. We don't know.
Yeah.
He didn't have an arc. He was him the whole time. He was the main character, but he had no arc. He was the same guy. We just kind of got more insight why he was tripping, but he didn't. It was just. It was weird because who had the arc was the dad, but that wasn't we didn't get a lot on him, but we saw where he came from. If anything, the dad had an arc, and even with him having an arc, he still didn't win at the end because it backfired on him. Yeah. So the kid still didn't forgive him. So even his
I mean, the dad's thing was just showing up. That's all it was. It was like showing up and kind of begging for forgiveness like 3-4 times throughout the whole movie. But it's like, why? Why should you be forgiven? Because you have evolved, but you're not acknowledging, it's kind of like one of those things where people will say that was a long time ago. That's like such an old, kind of antiquated way of thinking of how like sometimes older people think, well, that happened a long time ago. You know what I mean? And they expect you to just move on. And it felt like that with the father showing up. Even when he tried to talk about it a little bit, it was uneven. Remember that conversation they tried to have? And then he was like, and he walked out. And I was like that's...
All that's, Like I said, he probably didn't know how to express right in the movie. But like I said, it was just like, even the person who had the full arc, it didn't even work out for him. And so, and then the main character didn't have an arc. He was just him the whole time. So like I said, you have to choose a person who we're going to follow and who we're going to be rooting for. Or even if he decided to forgive him or some kind of compromise or whatever, that would have been fine. But it was just this thing where you could tell he was a different guy because you kind of seen the sacrifice he did for the guy that was kind for him that worked at the store who got hurt. So you see him being selfless and just trying to pull himself together and all this other kind of stuff. But then even that was so fast forwarded from him being there washing cars to his brother cleaning them up. And then he's fine now, kind of. He finds a halfway house with the minister and all this other kind of stuff. So it was just like, the main character who was the artist, Terrell, we really didn't get much of him. And so all these things are happening around him. And then when these things collide, there's still not enough time with them together for us to feel anything for either one of them. And it's hard to root for. Like, you rooting for him to get together with his dad who hurt him so bad. And the dad did well, but maybe not well enough. It was just all this stuff. And then all this is back to the, kind of like, if I close my eyes, I'm watching some slave narrative stuff, but the whole thing with the, the good book says, and the Bible says this, and then people using scriptures for their benefit, but then you say another scripture that trumps their scripture, then it's a stalemate. And
it was a lot. For me,
I'm like, where's your wife? Where? How's that album coming? How's that album coming? Like a single she got.
Even with her, she touched on. I think what was missing throughout the film, and it might, it kind of goes into, how we feel about counseling as a community, which I support. You know what I'm saying? So like the fact that like his wife, from the beginning of the film, fell out of bed and was like, I can't do this anymore. You know what I mean? Go get help. I can't do this anymore. And then the son's like, can I have pancakes? And he's like, okay, let's go have pancakes. That was the only time that there was any kind of talk about counseling. So like, there's no way that they could have solved their issues, the father and the son, on their own. They would have needed to have a third party for that. And there was never any third party except for the mom just saying, that was a long time ago, just forgive him. He's your father. Look at him. He's changed. But no one addressed the son or the child's issue, which is a big thing that, that he spoke to and why he remained angry. And it's a little unsettling to see at the end. Like, if you think about it, really thought about him as a person, he's walking around in America still angry. there was no solution to his situation. I mean, he's gonna make some heck a lot of like good art. You know what I'm saying? I'd like to see what his next exhibit is gonna be, but like his personal being did not evolve in this movie. It didn't.
No, he had no arc, and I was waiting for the flashback of him beating his kid.
No, his kid was too sweet for that.
No. But I'm saying it was just like he's almost like, I'm above all this stuff, like I'm better now kind of thing. But I'm thinking like, you're not at all. You're just exploiting yourself basically, and it's just working out because you have that, that agent that like your stuff. You got that person that's kind of benefiting off your black pain. So
but I mean, that's something to speak to. I know we've jumped around like a lot.
We've jumped around a lot too, so we're just following suit.
The part of when he was exhibiting, and folks were just basically picking at him, you know what I mean, and telling them what they needed and wanted, and he flipped, he cracked. And her reaction, like, it just speaks to what I was saying at the beginning, like the whole benefactor thing, you know what I mean? Like, you need to act right. And I understand that in that sense of being an artist, and like you said, on that level of like, there's things that you don't want to do that you gotta do. But I mean, that was kind of like the snapping kind of reaction was was that extreme, or like, was it all the stuff that was happening? Was it because he saw his father there? Like, what do you think about that?
I didn't think it was a clear pathway. I guess we're supposed to assume that everything kind of hitting him all at once kind of thing, but it seemed like he's always been this kind of pent up dude that didn't like all the situation. And so, it's me guessing versus the movie letting me know how we got here, in a clean way. It's just kind of like he just got to a certain point. But was there some truth to that kind of stuff? Yes. A lot of artists don't want to fool with folks,
right?
Prodding them, asking them questions, having certain tones of ownership. Because I own some of your art, so I own you, or because I asked for this, you need to say yes, and you gotta just all this kind of stuff. So all that stuff was very familiar. I thought it was well done, and he kind of spoke to it. So like I said, the stuff that felt genuine was the art stuff. That it felt like they, one, been through it, two, had a clear expression of how that feels to be in that situation. All that family drama stuff, he's not good with it yet because he don't know how to say it yet. That's how I felt. He didn't have the words for that yet. So maybe he shouldn't have put it in there because it just came out like blah, blah, John Singleton summed it up real nice with Cuba Gooding Jr. punching at the sky. That summed up all that stuff. And that was just him, air punching. Instead of all this, instead of what we got. It's kind of like, man. Because, yeah. So all the stuff that was art felt genuine. I can understand. I can relate to it. Somebody who isn't an artist could see like, man, that's how it is for an artist or how it could be. I really connected to that. But all that other family stuff, and not to say people can't relate to the family stuff, but I thought that's the part that was rough. And like I said, it could just be as simple as he hasn't worked through his own stuff and didn't know another way to say it. And sometimes you could say I'm mad, and sometimes other people could say, you did this particular thing for me. It made me feel this way, and then I reacted because of this. And he's still on the I'm mad, and that can mean anything. And it's expression, but it's not clear. It's not understanding. Like, we get the idea, but is it communicating well? Not so much. For me. But some of that stuff with the interactions with his family and different things and the Bible stuff and I still love him and boy, I did the best I could do for you. Like I said, I'd like, did somebody trick me and it's going to be secretly directed by Tyler Perry, which I wouldn't have believed because it was actually shot well. But if it would have said written by Tyler Perry, I would not have been surprised. I'd been like, that makes sense.
Now, I think there's a difference. I'd probably differ with that. I understand you're speaking more to the development of it. But you might be
I'm,
speaking to the
I,
dialogues as well.
yeah, I'm talking. I'm speaking to the dialogue and the jumbledness of some of that stuff. It was all over the place.
But what I did enjoy, and when I was saying it was impactful in the sense, the storyline between the father and the son, like you don't see a lot of that. What's the first thing you harken back to was Boys in the Hood, when you thought about a father, son kind of connection.
Oh no! I'm not comparing this to no. I definitely this is not. No, I'm not comparing this to Boys in the Hood. I'm just talking about how something was expressed in a certain kind of way and everybody could understand versus how this situation was done in this movie. But I wasn't thinking about Trey and his dad necessarily, Lawrence Fishburne. That was, to me, I like that. In a hard time and situation, I like the dynamics of that father-son relationship as opposed to how this was handled in this movie. So no.
But how often do you see that in movies is what I'm saying. I mean, I did, I didn't mind that. I just didn't necessarily feel it was completely developed. You know what I mean?
I would say if it's going to be like that, then I'd rather not see that.
Mm.
If it's going to be like that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do I want to see father and son stuff? Yeah, of course. Or father and daughter stuff? Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. I thought I was going to see Terrell and his son, to be honest. I thought it was going to be kind of a father-son with that. So that was kind of one of the things I was like, oh, he got a young boy, young black boy. And he's a black artist speaking to that kind of stuff, and almost kind of like this is how you avoid this, is how you avoid that, or kind of sharing his story in a way and making beauty out of a hard time or a hard situation or that kind of stuff, like the lessons in that. But that's none of that was going on. And not that it has to. He made the movie he wanted, right? And it's his first movie, and that's fine. Like I said, it has some beautiful art. It has some beautiful music. It has some parts that was just, like I said, beautifully shot and nuances and stuff. And then some of it, like I said, it was just kind of like all over the place and just kind of heavy-handed in a way. And some of the stuff, it just feels like, and like I said, it's not like I'm joking about Tyler Perry, but I'm just talking about how Tyler Perry is just very tropey and very heavy-handed. Because even with Tyler Perry's, that stuff could be true. I don't think it's very common, but I think it's possible. So even with him, I know that, even though some of that stuff is outlandish and crazy, is it possible? Yeah, it's probably possible. Do I think that's the best light for us? No. Do I think it's the majority of us? No. Do I feel kind of thrown off when I see that kind of stuff? Yes, I do. And so do I want him to start creating and making stuff? No. But would I sit there and watch that craziness because I don't feel it represents us or I don't feel like it speaks to me? Then no, I'm not going to watch it. And so, this one, I think he falls a little bit into the same kind of thing where the way we express stuff or say stuff, we might lean heavy in it because, we don't often get a chance to speak or to show or represent. And when we do, sometimes we're just not used to, it's like almost like driving a car, it makes sense to you until you put your hand behind the wheel and then you notice how even a little turn could almost flip a car at a certain speed. You don't think like that. You just know the concept. But being behind the wheel is a totally different thing. And so you thinking like you see in movies how, people moving their hands and they're constantly turning and stuff like that. It's almost like if you saw it in a movie and somebody wasn't turning their hands back and forth, you'd think they wasn't driving, right? Because that's what driving looks like in movies and TV shows, right? And you drive your first car, you'll flip the car, turning your hand constantly left and right. No, your hands are straight most of the time. You only turn it when you really got to make a turn. It doesn't take all that extra steering. And so it reminds me of that.
So I hear you. But as you were saying, I when I think about Tyler Perry and I think about, obviously him discovering his niche pretty early on and just, being mightily rewarded for it. I think sometimes people just write what they know, and they write their experiences. And, obviously with this being his first film and being an artist, I don't know how this came about, but I think speaking from that perspective, for me, for both of those roles that I've played in my life, you write what you think it's going to be a great concept. Like, oh, wow, if I could make a movie out of this thought that I have, I think it would be successful. But I think there's a difference sometimes between the idea and the actual script. You know what I mean? And I don't know how it came about. I don't know what the background is and all that. I think you said it was like maybe semi, biographical.
Yeah, because he was saying his kids were getting older, and they were asking about their grandfather and stuff, and he was trying to find a way to kind of, and not that necessarily he was probably making a movie so he could have this conversation, because I wouldn't show this to my young kid, but maybe he was trying to work it out or something. I don't know, but that's what he was saying. And I think it was going to be some documentary project that they were working on, but didn't end up happening. So maybe this was just like a spinoff of something else he was working on, like it was a thing, but it was a change the medium, because like, okay, let's don't do a documentary, maybe a loosely based story or something. Maybe that's what the change was, but it sounded like he was working on a documentary, and then this ended up happening instead. But when the person asked, like, this is supposed to be your story, then he kind of backed off of it a little bit. So who knows?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. That's another part of it being kind of uneven in that sense. Because some things can be forgiven in writing and in film and in art. If you're like, oh, this is them, we can't, and you spoke to that earlier, like we can't determine how this should have been placed because that's their real life. This is how it happened to them in real life. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I had to check myself. Because I was kind of salty. But like I said, I don't know. And I said, let me check on this guy and see what's up and see if I get some information, some background, something. Because it's not fair just because, like I said, I never seen it or it didn't happen to me, which I think is a blessing. But it doesn't take away, it's not fair. I could just say it's not for me, or how I felt about parts of it. Because like I said, parts of it I loved. I thought it was beautifully done. I thought it was keen insight. But like I said, to me, that was more or less the art part and the process of being an artist part and the dealings with the business of art, all that kind of stuff, like shined real for me. But like I said, somebody could see the other part and be like, that shines real for them. It's possible. Like I said, I'm just blessed to say that I've never came across that, in that way. Not that I never had any issues with family members and stuff like that, because yeah, of course. But I'm just talking about that particular, never have.
Yeah, and it speaks to that, that point of the tortured artist. Like, most artists have had some kind of, trauma or something like that, and it creates the best art, and that's in writing and music and everything, every aspect of art. So like if that was part of the concept, like I get that, but it's the layering, like we were saying earlier, that could have been better. The introduction could have been better. I actually really like the opening. I put that in my notes. I love the opening, that it was like, the credits were like a painting, you know what I mean? I really like that a lot, it's just interesting to mix the two.
Yeah. And actually I like the beginning of the movie because it went a while before it changed. And I like the ending of the movie. I like the beginning, like I said, the establishment of him and his family, that he's a painter, a successful painter, him dealing with an annoying art agent, him having a real talk with his woman about, being fair about, let's take turns with doing our art and stuff like that. How can we work this out and stuff? Him concerned about an aging mother and how he got to juggle that kind of stuff. His young son, which I wish we had got a little bit more to know about him. And then the stuff in the middle, like I said, it is what it is. And then I like the end. And I like the end as far as not giving in, as far as just because his dad tried to make it right, didn't make it all right with him necessarily, which is fair. Because really the movie didn't even show anything to make me feel that he would earn his place back or anything. And I like how he was honest about just like, I think it's anybody, even if you work in a regular job or you're in a gallery or doing whatever, to be like, I'm just kind of tired of this and let me just step away. Like, this is too much. Like, I can't be bound anymore. I can't just have one more person telling me what to do. I thought that was powerful. I like that part. So, so some of that, some of the stuff was really cool, but like some of it was just so extreme that it just kind of took me out of the movie. But the beginning I thought was cool because it set up a movie that we didn't get. And I like the ending because with all the craziness, it still had a reasonable, thought out landing.
Mm-hmm.
It was just the middle and how it all tied together. Because I don't really understand what the lesson of that was. Because I know it's supposed to be about, at least from the title, him kind of painting to work out and get some, resolution from all the trauma and stuff that he went through. But the way it was even done and shown, you didn't really see how it was even tied together in a way. You just kind of got some beautiful paintings out of context. And if it wasn't for certain things like the trash can or the lawnmower on fire, like why the lawnmower on fire? Why the trash can on fire? Like even with the trash can on fire, I still didn't quite understand what that part meant, but I did understand what the lawnmower thing came later. But what was it about the 3 boys, and why was the 2 boys wiped out? Did they die? Did something happen to a tragedy? It was just like, so when you didn't give it all, I just kind of thought it was unimportant. It was just beautiful art, but out of context. And so when he was trying to show how he was telling stuff, all of it didn't necessarily tell. And when they tried to show how it connected, to me, it didn't make sense on all the connections necessarily. You know what I mean? Like the obvious stuff, like the nail or the lawnmower on fire, I got that. But some of the stuff, the other paintings and stuff of the houses and what happened, or the person sitting out front of the house and stuff, I didn't really know quite how that related. And since you're tying that stuff together, keep that going to lead us in a journey of this image talks about this image is a resolve of that, this image connects or something, even the image that he did of his mom, which I thought was kind of cool, but that was kind of interesting even how that even came about, because he did it in a hotel room and he just destroyed the hotel room to paint on a sheet of his mom, so he painted his mom on a sheet, and then that was in the show at the end. But it's even with that, like, I don't know, it was just,
I mean, is it possible that he was trying to make an art film as well? I mean, there's elements of that, because I just, not saying that was, a whole big concept of what he decided to do, but when he was pushing that canvas and he stopped,
his younger self,
like you said, it's like, okay, what's that part about? You know what I mean? So like, I mean, I noticed the art. I mean, was that the point, is to know, for us to notice that he was working on this piece, and
it's his job as a director and writer for it to make sense to us. Like I said, if this was in Spike Lee's hands, it'd have been a different kind of thing. Because like you said, he had these little beautiful situations and moments, and like even when he's sitting on the bench with his mom, he's facing one way, his mom facing the other one, kind of in the background. It's like, that's a perfect shot. Like, it was lined up like paintings. I'm like, oh, this is beautiful. So you have moments like that, like I said, but it was just, it's all this stuff in between, and so
well, I feel like his son was like his medicine in a sense, because anything that little boy wanted, he was like, let's go do it. You know what I mean? He paid attention to him. He loved him. He was very affectionate with his son. So I feel like that connection with him was like a physical the physical connection with his son was purposeful, to show that he obviously didn't want, to replicate what happened to him, when he was growing up. And I think because the little boy was so young, that it was easy on the eye, in a sense, to be able to see this man love on this young kid like that, and the kid, wanting to be connected to his father. I thought that was actually pretty good. The part in the hotel room, like you said, when he was, had that reaction and scared his son, that was, I don't know. That was, like you said, it was a closed-in space. I don't know.
Like
that part was interesting.
I couldn't imagine his kid not hearing that before. with all the stuff he be going. Cause we saw, like I said, I didn't see. Matter of fact, he didn't even show him with his kid that often, even in the movie. So it was just like I said, it was.
Well, at the end, not the very end, but when he cut the image out of the lawnmower scene,
yeah,
I wonder if that was like some kind of semblance of healing. You know what I mean? Like this is not me anymore. I don't need this image anymore.
Well, somebody waking up from night terrors and punching through walls and stuff like that, I would need a little bit more than him cutting out him, because I took it as him cutting himself out of that situation. But they showed too much to make that the resolve. That's almost like seeing somebody fall off a building, and then you see him land softly, and it's just like, wait a minute, that was a high building. I need to see some broken legs at least, or you limping very hard. It's like, you know what I mean? It's cause and effect. That's basic. And so to me, it didn't. I don't know. Give me something to show that, you could do a montage or something, or him getting help, or a montage of something. But it didn't seem like enough time went by because he just had that blow up. So, so where did that resolve? And is it temporary resolve? That's all I'm saying. Like if they showed more of him and his kid, would we have seen some scenes where he kind of cut up on his kid at the breakfast table in the morning or something? He say something wrong? Who knows? He seemed like he gets triggered. So. Did we just not see him often enough? Maybe we saw the good parts, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah.
So his brother was younger than him. So the mom.
I'm assuming so.
Yeah, they didn't really discuss that part either about like how that came about, because the brother was talking about his father and was saying something like he was glad his father was different or something like that. You know what I mean? So that was interesting. I wanted to know more about that. Like, so if we're talking about her staying, still being in love with the husband, she had someone, after the husband at some point, you know what I mean? So like that development of like, so you had a child, you had a relationship, what draws you back to the husband, and all he's been doing all this time is going like in and out of recovery, or you know what I mean, and coming back to you and you helping him out. Like what makes the love strong when you're being the caretaker the majority of the time? What are you getting out of this? What's beneficial to you, so I would have wanted to know more about that.
Yeah, or don't have that character in there, or like don't have the uncle in there. It wasn't enough space for it. They weren't even dealing with their own character. Like I said, I don't even know the main character that well. Honestly. And I thought he was the person I was following through the movie. But it really was his dad. And in his own story, he didn't win.
Right. He didn't.
And neither did Terrell thing. He might have ruined his whole situation, to be honest.
Well, when he gave away that piece... somebody wasn't happy.
Right. Or even he was disrespectful to his patrons who buy his artwork. And I thought it was interesting too, where that guy was trying to hit on him in a way, talking about guy's piece over his bed and all this other kind of stuff. I'm like, which I know that stuff happens. But yeah. To me, if he was just stuck to that kind of stuff, that'd have been dope. Him, his lady, his child, and the art world, and juggling that stuff and keeping it lined up.
So a flashback of the father. Is that what you're saying? The father he didn't need to be in there as much as he was. He could have just been like a flashback of him having like some trigger moments or something like that. Is that what you're leaning
I think the only thing that really affected anything was that, because all the stuff he went through and changed, it wasn't for his son to see. You know what I mean? Like, all that stuff that happened, it was so much stuff outside of his son that went down with the dad, that if the dad's not going to say what he went through, or, or because even the explanation stuff wasn't strong, but I guess everybody don't always have the words. I don't know.
The explanation for drugs was really, I don't know. It was just, the fact that he was like, Yeah, I was helping somebody move. We went to their house. She's like, "Oh, you want to try this?" And I was like,
That's it.
okay.
That's it. He's
Right,
saving somebody from drugs, and he just thought. Now he went there and stopped the person from using drugs. Then he takes the drugs from the person, and then he uses the drugs.
And now he's an addict.
And that was a Tyler Perry moment. That right there, that was very Tyler Perry-ish. I'm like, I kind of looked. I'm like, did he just become a drug addict, trying to stop a drug addict from being a drug addict? Say you got fired. Say you couldn't get any more medicine because you hurt yourself cutting grass, and the doctors would give you more medicine, so you started taking that to kind of make the pain go away because you got desperate or something. Or say somebody laced your weed or something. Something. But it's like, you know, like what? Like I said, now that could have happened, but have I ever heard of anybody becoming a quote unquote crackhead by going to a crack den to pull somebody out of there, and you went there and took crack after you took it from them because you knew it was wrong? It's killing me, man.
He was just being helpful. He was being helpful.
Helped himself to some crack. That was a side-eyed moment. I remember just kind of like, I had to pause. Like that was a moment that I actually just kind of like, that took me out of it. Like,
it was extreme. Yeah, it wasn't, there wasn't a connection. Like if I want to say like, if your father told you that, if my father told me that, I'd be like, what? Like you didn't think about it? Like you just decided you were just going to try, like trying a piece of candy. Like, have you had a Snickers before?
But you went in there to get them.
I thought he was moving somebody.
Oh yeah, he said moving. He came across it.
Yeah,
and he took it from them because they were on drugs, and then he ended up using it.
Yeah,
like it made me have to recalculate during the movie. Like I was like, did I hear that right? Like I honestly like, wait a minute, what? He got on crack how? Like what happened? Not even he was in pain or blah 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 or whatever. Or even like he he was moving, he found it and he didn't, but to act like he went in there and tried to save somebody from themselves. Or say he was on drugs before and he got off and he got back on or something.
I was going to say the exact thing. Like, if he had tried something else and he elevated to that, or if he, like you said, was on it before and was like, okay, I'm having a rough day, but it just simply seemed like a piece of candy. Like someone said, you should try this. And he was like, okay. And he did. And then he just became addicted, after that. So
yeah, but nobody even said try it because he knew it was bad and he was taking it from the other person. Stopped him from doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So stuff like that, like, and there was a lot of little things like that. It's just like, wow. Like I said, now if the kid would have hurt his foot or something, or hurt his leg or whatever, and been like, oh, walk it off, and then had the kid still working, and then they go back home and his foot swell up, and his mom like, what happened? Oh, he just sprained himself, and then she checks it and be like, that boy's leg is broken. Like, LaRon, what'd you do to that boy? Right? But no, he steps on a nail. The nail goes to his foot. Right? And then he bandages it up, put a sock on it. He's missing a shoe.
I mean, realistically, how did he walk that far, losing that much blood to get to his door without fainting in the middle of the street?
He just needed to be there. It didn't matter. Somebody read that. Like, we need to get him. We need to get him there. He needs to be. His mom needs to be outside, just getting home. Him walking in the middle of the street, not on the sidewalk, in the middle of the street with the street light on top of him, so she could see him walking towards him, looking like a zombie, and that's her baby walking down the street, and asking, "Where your dad?" The crackhead that she didn't know that was a crackhead. She found out that night, and I guess the kid found out that day.
Yeah, you're not being nice.
You talking to me?
Yeah.
I'm not being nice about what?
You knew they knew. I mean, she knew for sure. She definitely knew. She knew he was a crackhead.
Okay,
She knew
she
her
was
husband
wrong.
was a
Then
crackhead.
then that was wrong of her to leave her with that guy.
Yeah. I think that Terrell was more enamored with his son because of just their relationship of father-son. And of course, he probably had been in a car with his dad before when his dad probably brought drugs, and you know what I'm saying. But like, I feel like that moment in time was for him to have this realization of like, yeah, he's on drugs, but I don't matter to him.
Okay.
I don't matter. He's not, because he said, take me to the hospital several times. And his dad was like, shake it off, basically, you know.
Okay. Well, I don't go by what they showed in the movie. And if that's the case, and I'm going by what they showed me of their relationship, I would think that guy never liked him.
What? I didn't get that. Why? Unpack that.
Where'd you see they were getting along before that?
But see, this is the thing. Sometimes when we go deeper, okay.
I'm
So
just
I
saying.
was gonna go deeper in the sense of just making it relatable as far as our community and our culture. Of basically, if you look at his age and you think about his family, you wonder like, did his family show him love? Like, if nobody showed you that, then how do you show that to your kid? You know what I'm saying? So like, I think sometimes we have to factor that kind of stuff in there when we're looking at ourselves on screen. You know what I'm saying? If no one showed him that, then like, is he gonna, hug his kid and do all the stuff that we assume that he should be doing if no one ever showed him that? But then when you think about Terrell doing it with his own son, it might be because he had a wife who showed him that. Somebody had to show him how to love. His mom loved him, but was she didn't do a great job of it, but the wife was there for him 100%,
I'm just saying, I'm not assuming that LeRon loved Terrell. I have nothing to assume that because they didn't show it at all.
Mm.
I'm not going to assume it. They showed everything else. Like, we never seen anything with them other than that.
So what do you think the forgiveness journey was for him? Why do you think he was so connected to like showing up everywhere, he was? He was, was that for selfish reasons? Was that like, oh, I'm all the way cured, if you will, if I could get just this one thing done? Because I feel like that was some semblance of love if he was pursuing him, in that sense, because he kept showing up. He kept showing up, and a lot of fathers don't show up. He kept showing up, hoping.
Well, the law fathers who don't show up, the ones that do are the ones after their child's successful and they want to be in that limelight with their child that's successful.
There's that.
That goes along with what you said.
But he wasn't, I didn't see any signs of that necessarily. I didn't see, did he speak to it initially? Go ahead.
I was just going by all the clips and stuff that he was fanboying off his successful rich artist son. That's all the clips and stuff he had in his glove box, right?
And I get that part, but did he speak to it in the sense of like, you owe me, or, I feel like I belong in this light with you? I mean, I feel like he was more on the like, I want to be forgiven train than he was the like fame train. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's collecting those pieces, those articles and stuff like that is like your child's artwork that you put on the refrigerator. You know what I'm saying? It could be equated to that too. He didn't have access to his artwork, so he took the clips,
Of his rich, successful son.
Stop it. He just happened to be rich and successful.
Okay. And he just happened to show up when he was rich and successful. And not when he was having a hard time trying to figure his stuff out. Yeah, I get it.
These are facts.
Like the football dads and the basketball dads and stuff, I guess, right? That just pops up in the rappers whose fathers show up after they are successful. Or the comedians whose fathers show up after they are successful and want tickets to the games or access to the famous people that their child has access to and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was just timing, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Like I said, they showed me everything else. I didn't see their relationship before, or it being good or whatnot. I don't know. I'm kind of being funny because they could have been good or whatever, but I'm just saying they took the time to show all the rest of it, and so I'm going by what they showed. And since they took the time to show a lot of flashbacks and details of those flashbacks, I figured if there's anything I needed to see about them getting along, they would have shown it if it was there.
Yeah.
Now, if you would open up
That's
that
true.
little glove box and before I got on crack, here's all your pictures that I used to keep of, that you used to give me as a kid on the napkin. When we went to the diner and you used to always draw on my little napkins and you thought I threw them away, like I kept them in my glove box. Look, all these little pictures you did on my little napkins from when we went to those little restaurants all the time. I kept all those. I've always been your fan. Blah, 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 blah.
But are we under the assumption that all fathers, not all fathers love their sons, but I mean, sometimes.
You just said he had all those clippings in his glove box.
Right, but I'm going backwards on the backstory.
So if you're a clipper now and be sentimental about clippings and stuff, wouldn't you been the same sentimental person before you got on crack to have little images and pictures and stuff like? Wouldn't that would change?
Not necessarily if that man fell in love with that woman and he loved that woman, and then they made a baby, and the mom was like, into her child. She was nurturing, and he got on crack and that was his thing, and he abandoned both of them basically. If you're saying that you don't think he really ever loved them, then I mean, two things can be true in this sense. I'm
kind of being funny, but also, the sad part is we're in 2024 talking about a crackhead dad. This was the premise of a movie in 2024. Oh, I didn't think I was ever going to hear them words together. And it wasn't an 80s movie. Like I said, I don't know. Like I said, he probably loved this. It was just a lot of convenient stuff. And like I said, for them to show us how his dad was in that situation, it's like, I guess he could be both. But there's these big hard swings of like, if you want us to be on his side or not. Do you want us to have the forgiveness journey along with the son or not? But the what you're feeding us is like, I can't make anything out of this. I can't build a bridge with what the movie given me. Okay? You didn't give me material to build a bridge for me as a viewer to that character. You didn't give, Terrell the pieces to the bridge for him to bridge to that character. And so I'm not bringing my own material. You are giving me the material or not giving me the material. I'm coming to see what you came up with. I'm not there to sing the chorus. Don't put the mic to me. That's your job. You the singer. You sing. Don't and you no. This is your show. You give me everything I need to be able to process this dinner you made me.
Gotcha.
For me. But like I said, it might not be for me. Like I said, I like the parts I liked. I'm not trying to be funny. What I didn't want to do is just dog this movie, but I'm glad we're having a conversation, because I said my good parts I liked about it and what I thought really stood out and stuff, and also the stuff that made me get a side eye. And like I said, it was just a heavy movie. And like I said, it didn't help the audience that I was watching it with because all the parts, you hear the sound effects and stuff. I'm like, oh goodness. And
so what was the lure of you wanting to see that movie? Was it the ads? Was it the trailer? Was it, I mean, the ads were beautiful. You know what I mean?
I knew it was going to be a lot. And I was curious because it was an artist kind of thing. When I saw the family stuff, I was like, I'm kind of good. But when you said you saw it, I thought it'd be a good conversation for us to have. But I didn't know. But I thought it was going to be something else. I thought it was going to be, like I said, Love and Basketball, but with artists or something. And I thought it would be heavy, but heavy in a different kind of way. And so for it to be this, I was like, oh, okay. But yeah, so I wouldn't have went and saw it in a theater if you hadn't seen it. It was on my radar because I saw the trailer and I thought it was interesting, but something about it, I'm like, I don't know if I was ready or wanted to go there. But the thing I thought I was going to go there with, it didn't anyway. It turned out to be a whole totally different kind of movie, which is fine. So yeah, so I kind of went for the discussion that we were going to have, and just because I like, talking out these movies and stuff, because sometimes, people can feel a ways about stuff or feel funny about something and don't really have the words to say what the issue they have with it, or if they don't have an issue with it. But I kind of like the conversation and kind of just digging in and kind of hearing somebody else's side of it and what they kind of got from it, and kind of working it that way, and just kind of sharing what came from it, and like I said, the experience, and how we felt about it, how it relate to other things and stuff like that. So yeah. So what about you?
I mean, I of course, because it was art related, I definitely wanted to see it, but it wasn't what I expected. And I'm not saying it in a bad way. I did know it was going to be deep. But I did not mind, the father-son storyline. I didn't mind that. I wish it was better developed. I wish it was introduced, as we kind of mentioned, in flashbacks for him when he was to explain his triggers, as opposed to it being presented the way that it was. I do agree that it didn't give an opportunity for him, to be able to relay his story to us, his true story, and how he survived that, and how he got to the point of being a successful artist. I think that's what I was going there for. I wanted to see an artist is honestly what I wanted to see. I wanted to see, how he got to the point that he was, and what his background was, and all of those things. Did I know that there was going to be some pain and some agony in it? Yeah, because that's the story of all artists. There's always some story, like that fuels creativity. So I was looking forward to seeing that, but I didn't know that it would linger throughout the whole movie. I didn't know it was going to be just a like, forgive me, no, forgive me, no, forgive me, no, forgive me. Okay, well, kind of, that cliche of like forgiving and not forgetting. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I feel like that's how it ended. And but it makes sense that, like you said before, there was nothing throughout the film that made it seem like there was any successful work that would warrant a full-on forgiveness or a partial forgiveness, at the end. So I think he did the best he could. Yeah. Because hanging on to that anger was not serving him well anymore. And maybe that's part of his evolution as an artist, is like, maybe I'm going to do new work from this. Maybe my next, journey is going to be about how to structure forgiveness, and go through that journey, as opposed to just hanging on to anger as he had been doing throughout his career.
So question. So he had just went off on his dad, right? Talking about, you see, he didn't change. You see, you're the same, This is what I was looking for, because dad got a little pissed because they kept going back and forth. And the dad's probably like, I'm tired of trying to win you back. You don't want to hear it, blah, 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 right? So shortly after, he sees him at the exhibit, right? And he's noticing a picture of himself, and he sees himself through his son's eyes from the image of the piece of art, right? What do you think happened that clicked between him going off on his dad and seeing him in the gallery, where he just kind of like forgives him, or kind of has, not necessarily forgives, but almost he kind of like, you know what, whatever, like, I'm good. What happened that got him to this resolve? Not even a clean resolve, but what do you think got him to that resolve from that encounter they had just before that?
Nothing.
Exactly.
I didn't see exactly one word that triggered him into saying, do it for your mother. You know what I mean? Nothing. Or like, do it for your grandson, or, I want to see my kid, my grandson. So let's develop this new relationship. I feel like he was ending his relationship with his father at the end. I feel like he ended it. And again, if, I feel like he was kind of being tortured by his dad just showing up. I feel like his dad was being disrespectful by just, not being uninvited, not being invited to these events in his life, and just showing up. And I mean events even, when I think about the moving process, that was an event that was happening in his life. You know what I mean? So the fact that he just kept coming in some folks' eyes might be like, oh, he was relentless, like he wasn't going to give up. He just really wanted to, make sure that this situation resolved. But as you said, there was no work being done. No one said, we can't do this. We need to go to counseling and have a third party. They relied on the mother to just say those things. It says in the Bible, it's time, all of those antiquated thoughts that, we often, kind of say as a people in our community to just kind of move on, as I mentioned before. I think that could have been better. I think that there should have been some talk of, I can't do this with you. We need someone else to help, or we need, if he wanted to go in that direction. But I think that, I don't know if he wanted to forgive his father. I think that his anger fueled his, his artwork and his creativity and made him a successful artist. What would he have been if he wasn't angry? What would he have been if he wasn't mad at his dad? Would he have been an artist? But would he have been an artist?
Me personally, I don't necessarily think you have to necessarily be in pain to be an artist. I think you have to have a perspective, and people could, because if your feelings are your feelings, right? And so that could be anything. That could be just, introspection. It could be inspiration. It could be happiness. It could be a whole bunch of stuff. It just depends on if somebody decides to lean in on. So I think just because you don't necessarily have a big trauma doesn't mean you can't be an artist because you don't have that thing.
Right. Right. I'm just saying, if he
still would have been an artist, he still, and it seems like the stuff that was more personal is the stuff that he didn't show, it seems like, because that's why his agent was surprised and that's why he felt not comfortable showing her that type of work. So I'm assuming he did different kind of work that wasn't that personal. I'm assuming from that.
Did we see, because I don't remember, did we see him
no, he just talked about
any paintings?
Show. No, he just talked about his other show.
When he was young. No, when he was young, did we see him doing any kind of art?
No. And we didn't see no art he had before we saw the personal stuff he had in his studio, because he was saying he had just got done with a show that we didn't see none of the work from. And all we saw was the current stuff. So I'm assuming it was different because he felt not comfortable showing her yet. And she liked where it was going.
But that's part of that arc, like you were saying, that was missing, because we saw him being, harmed and all the things that was going on with him as a youth. But like, when did this creativity spark? You know what I mean? Like, when did that happen? That would have been nice to see that. But
yeah. But that would come along with, following Terrell, which is who the movie I thought was about, but it kind of wasn't. He was a visitor in his own movie. I thought we were going to be following him and his wife, Aisha, and his son. Possibly his mom and dad, and how they, how all that kind of stuff tied together.
Right. Well, like you said, I mean, I would definitely watch it again. I thought it was beautiful. The cinematography and all of that was great. I love the paintings.
Yes.
The paintings were wonderful. I did want to know, like you said, when he, painted over the two, I did want to know what that was about. I understood the cutting out part. I understood that part.
I thought it was kind of interesting with the feet of the shoes of the characters and stuff. He would leave them kind of plain. So say the shoe is going to be brown, he would leave it brown with no detail. And I'm like, why is it leaving feet with no detail? Why is that left out like that? So I noticed stuff like that. And I was kind of curious because it was consistent on other pieces that he did. So I'm like, that's pretty interesting. But it was like no insight for that kind of stuff and what that meant or whatever. It's, does that represent his damaged foot from when he's a kid?
Exactly. Right.
I don't know.
Blood does turn brown eventually. You know what I mean? So, but like you said, that was
too.
That's true. That's true. That is true.
But it looked like it was the shape of a shoe, but it was undetailed. And so I thought we would have gotten to that, or like I said, I thought that the paintings would be insight to what was going on in a clearer way. I thought that would be the narrative, like a comic book panel, and you go in and that's what that panel represents. And that's his son, that's his brother that died, or his best friend that died in this picture. And this is and this is his dad from here, and this is this, and this is that, and this is the house that this happened in. Something, but it didn't go down that kind of narrative. It didn't do that. It didn't do
So
that.
how many movies could you have made out of this one movie?
At least 5.
Name them.
Okay, so him and his woman, him and his art, and dealing with family and the artist's life, him and his dad, him and his mom, him and his brother, him and all the stuff together, but just edited or written better.
I would take out the brother because of what you said earlier that made sense. Like,
but if you
his
gave more
brother
to it,
didn't
it
have
would've
to
been
be in
fine.
it.
Right,
Yeah.
he wouldn't
Yeah.
have. But if he was just him and his brother and this whatever, then that would be different too.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
it could have been a brother with a cautionary tale, what, you know, we've seen before, where one brother got into the art, other brother got into crime or whatever kind of silliness or whatever, never really had direction. And he always trying to pull his brother in, and he could, you know, it could be anything.
Yeah.
Or the brother never felt like he connected to his dad because he felt like he was, you know, the unwanted kid and all this other kind of stuff. But, you know, but he had to be around him and wish he would accept him when he was younger. But now they're older, he wants a relationship with him, but he don't want it because he feels rejected all these years. He could be a whole bunch of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, because it was interesting how the brother just like showed up.
Just like
it
the
was
uncle.
like, hey, just started talking. And then that was it. Like, where does he live? What does he do? You know what I mean? Like, what's his background? And then the next time you saw him was in the hospital when he was like, oh, mom's in the hospital.
Just
that
like
was
the
it.
uncle. Just like the uncle and his auntie.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you think the first person he would probably land on, since she loves him so much, would be his mom? And then
True.
that's what his mom think, like, we need to get this right. And they're plotting to get his son to come in there, and then find out the dad is there because that's where she cleaned him up and brought him back, because this happens all the time and she's the only one that puts up with him.
Mm-hmm.
Why have the brother and the sister-in-law when that would be the mom, since she loves him so much and they still connected?
Right.
Why wouldn't it be her? What is, I don't get it.
To get him to the halfway house because he had a friend who was involved with the halfway house.
She could have had
That's how that
halfway
works.
house in church. She could
well,
have halfway house without her. But
yeah.
is she gonna? I don't know. It just seemed like she always loved him and always, you know, took care of him. Then it would be that again. And then I would almost be like, you know, she's putting her money where her mouth is, versus like, you know, I love him and I still have feelings for him, but then he's somewhere else. It's almost kind of like, then you're not really tripping about him then. But if he's under your roof, it's kind of like, Mom, why he's in the house again? Why is he still here? However that goes.
That would have been interesting if he came there and the father just came out of a room instead of standing outside on the steps. Like, yeah, that would have been interesting. That would have been an interesting twist. That's why you didn't pack anything, because Dad's here. It wouldn't have gone that lightly though.
Yeah, she was too busy trying to die from, you know, high blood pressure that she knew about.
Stop it. I'm really expecting it to be, because that could be triggering for an audience too. You know what I mean? If you didn't expect to be sitting in a film, you know, watching this relationship, you know, try to dissolve into something good, and it just didn't happen. Like,
right.
What was the purpose of that whole plot? Like, why was that there? Why do we do that? You know what I mean? What was the purpose of it? So
my thoughts exactly. Yeah, like I said, yeah. Good on him though. Like I said, I hope he gets out of it what he needed. I hope he got some stuff off his chest or whatever, or got a chance to express it. I don't know. I'm happy for anybody who gets a chance. It just wasn't quite for me, even though parts of it was perfect for me. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I said, they definitely had a vibe to it. It had a style to it. And so when it turned to the other kind of movie, I was just kind of taken back by that.
But I definitely want to see it again. It's not that I don't, you know what I mean? I wouldn't say, oh, I wouldn't watch this again. I definitely want to see it again. And it might be for the art. It might be for me to like turn down the father-son thing, and you know what I mean? And just search for the art, you know, just search for the meaning in the art. And, you know, oh, I didn't see this the last time. You know, I didn't see this in this painting, and you know what I mean? But I definitely want to see it again. Would you recommend it?
Not necessarily. It's kind of like if you go by what we said, or the trailer intrigues you, then check it out. But to me, it, what I got out of this is like a new artist to check out his work. And if you have the exhibit that's local or somewhere I could go, I'll go check it out. Kind of like his work. And I love the soundtrack, so I'll buy the soundtrack. So those are two things that I kind of got from this movie: the art, which I loved, and also the soundtrack. I hope this guy makes another movie, and I hope that he'll get better as he goes along and stuff. Like I said, the thing is, I'm just kind of curious what other people are going to think about it, because I think some people will like it, and I think some people have some issues with it. I'm kind of curious. And now that we had our discussion and stuff, and we talked about it, I'll probably, go check out other reviews just to kind of hear what people are saying. I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times we'll just kind of like say, it was okay, and not really dig in or don't want to, say anything bad about stuff. But it's like nobody say anything to tear anything down, just giving insight and feelings about it. And it doesn't mean that somebody else won't like it or enjoy it. For me, it was a lot to digest. And once again, like I said, if this premise was done by, like I said, someone like Spike Lee, I think that it would be a totally different. And like I said, I think it's just because he's new. And I think that it is very personal. And for that, sometimes that could be the hardest thing to express, because, maybe not really quite ready to share everything and all the details is needed for stuff to line up and make sense. So if you share a partial story, it sounds incomplete. And even if you don't know something's missing, something's missing because it doesn't flow right. And I think that as an artist, I understand not having all the answers and working through stuff, but if you can't be honest about what you're working on, it'll show. I'll give you that. Like, if you ain't ready to talk about it, don't share. Otherwise, even if somebody don't know what's missing, it won't read right, because a lot of times it takes everything, good, bad, indifferent. It takes all of it to have balance. Even in the chaos, you need all of it. And so, but to me, if I wasn't ready to share something and I was just trying to keep it, share the parts I only wanted to share, but it really was part of a bigger story, I can understand how art would come off like not quite grabbing people because some parts are missing. And even though people don't know what it is, it just doesn't read quite right. And I think that's what kind of happened to this movie. The parts he wanted to share and felt good about, it made sense. The art stuff, the dealing with the people stuff when it came to his art, his stuff with his lady or his family and the immediate family, that kind of stuff. But the other stuff, the trauma stuff, yeah, it sounds like how something jumbled in somebody's head that ain't quite ready to share all of it yet. It felt like that. From how extreme it was at times to how it kind of jumped around. It wasn't really clear. It's like somebody telling half a story. And so what happened? And then what happened? And are you sure? Something's missing. Well, that's how it happened. Okay. And you just kind of like, when it's a conversation, you can walk away from it and be fine, be thinking in your head, that person lying or not saying all the stuff. But when it's a piece of art like a movie, it's kind of like, like, what is that? What happened? We're not the friend that would just let that slide. We're the person who paid to see it, and we kind of want the rest of it. If you're going to tell me, tell me. If not, tell me something else.
I wonder how it would have been if it was like we saw him as an artist going through the, the journey that he was going on, his ebbs and flows, and then he had a flashback. And then we're like, oh, okay, that's why he's like triggered and having these night terrors. And then, he has his, some more of his journey, and then some, the success at the end, and still has that kind of blow up with, the folks in the gallery. But his father shows up at the end. And we know he's not going to be able to forgive him because, like you said, we haven't seen anything throughout the film that's, that the two have worked on anything for forgiveness. But his father shows up at the end and he's like, I can't forget it, but I can give you this, you know what I mean? I can't I can't forgive you. I'll forgive you partially, but I can't forget it or whatever. You know what I mean? Just thinking how different that would have looked or been if it was like that, where his father was showed up in a flashback, and then at the end he showed up in, reality.
Yeah.
You're not buying it. Fine.
Like I said, it could have been done so many different ways, but it's just like, to me, I didn't get enough from it to get understanding.
Yeah.
Like I said, it was making leaps and bounds of leaps and stuff, but I just didn't see what propelled it, what would make it make sense and all that kind of stuff. Like, it could have been done plenty of ways. But unlike him and his relationship with his dad, we did not have the tools to resolve it either.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Yeah. There were beautiful moments. Like I said, even with the kid pulling up with the canvas and he's coming across and getting stuck in those moments. And I wish, even when he stopped and looked at those beautiful paintings, even though they were tragic, I wish we had some insight of what that meant and why he was getting stuck on those moments, because they all didn't line up necessarily with the flashbacks that we got.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
So it's kind of like,
true.
But like I said, that would come with doing it for a while, being a storyteller in that way to understand. It's almost like somebody who maybe have a good voice but don't know how to write. Like somebody with a good producer, right? They sound great, and then they, write their own stuff because they get a little popular, and then you'd be like, oh, they're just not a good writer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That great voice is wasted on some bad songs.
Mm-hmm.
It happens. Sometimes you don't have it all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, I can't wait to listen to that soundtrack again. Matter of fact, I might listen to that. Matter of fact, I should listen to that today. But maybe I'll listen to it tomorrow. But like I said, it was interesting, and like I said, maybe I'll watch it one more time. But yeah, but would I recommend it? Yeah, like I said, if it seemed like a movie that you want to check out, say check it out.
Mm-hmm.
But would I recommend it? No. Like somebody like you, I would recommend it to you because I know you like these kind of movies, and if I know somebody who likes, then I would. But to a casual person, no.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily no. Some stuff you just gotta be a movie goer, or you just like to you like the story, even cause like some people like Tyler Perry stuff, and they just like the drama, or they like the story, or they like seeing black faces, whatever it might be. And so if that's the kind of thing, then of course I'll be like, hey, check out this movie. It's along with that, or I'll just be like, okay, check it out, but I would look out for some of the stuff that's going to go down. It's more like this kind of a movie than like advertised.
Right.
If you're thinking this is going to be like this, then that's not what it's going to be.
Right.
And I can say that without telling them the answers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would not recommend it. I mean, I'm always, if I can support us, you know what I mean? I'm always running to the theater for that, especially when we know it's only going to be there for 1 week and we got to go as soon as it comes out.
Mm-hmm.
We've been talking about seeing Luther, and, that's...
Why don't they want us to see Luther?
It's a whole conspiracy, right?
Why is it that hard to see Luther?
Everybody loved Luther.
How can it be that hard? I love Big Luther and Little Luther. This don't make no damn sense. It should be this hard to see a movie about Luther Vandross. What is that?
Exactly. We've been waiting a long time for it too.
Never too much. I can't get none. What do you mean? It just make no sense.
Right.
How can a movie everybody want to be so elusive? This movie I'm trying to avoid. Like I saw this movie, right? But I can't find Luther?
Right. It'll be streaming though. I think in January. I think that's what they're saying, but I would have rather seen it in the theater.
I want to see it in the theater. I want the experience. I want to sing with everybody. I want everybody to laugh and joke around.
Exactly.
And all that kind of stuff together. It's going to be a party, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it shouldn't be this hard. So I don't know who's the one doing this and playing all these games and stuff, but they gotta quit playing. There's so many old movies being replayed, 40th anniversary, 20th anniversary, movies that shouldn't even be in the theater no more still there, and we can't get Luther? Luther, is this elusive? This is crazy.
Right.
He quit playing. Hopefully we'll see it eventually and we get a chance to discuss it. I'm looking forward to that movie, that documentary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. because it really, me being younger, hearing Luther, and me getting older, and be like, oh, he takes his mom to the award shows. Oh, he got kind of a quiet kind of background. His friend, all that kind of stuff. It's just like interesting, like stuff in plain sight, and also perspective and age and things that you don't notice as a child. And, and then you hear about him, kind of being a diva and getting into a certain kind of people, and he didn't like In Vogue. And I'm like, who don't like In Vogue? I love In Vogue, so just all the different kind of stuff, it's interesting, he's part of the family. Uncle Luther. So that would be nice and fun to discuss and see where they go with this documentary. Not that I was expecting all this tell-all and all this other kind of stuff, but a little insight to know and to be an adult and to recognize and hear and piece stuff together for myself as well. I think that would be a fun journey with that movie.
Yeah, that would have been a great Christmas movie. You know what I mean? A lot of times, in December, when you're always looking to go to the we go to the movies anytime, but sometimes people go around that time, so
yeah, for sure,
we'll see. Maybe it'll pop up somewhere.
Hopefully so.
Yeah.
All right, so was any last words on this situation / movie?
I mean, like I said, I would not recommend it. You know what I mean? I wouldn't tell someone not to go see it, but I would definitely, like you said, with all of those kind of details with it, I would mention those things. Again, I thought it was a beautiful film. I thought the acting was believable. It's just, like you said, in the end, what happened? Like, how was it resolved, in the end? But, again, I do like the storyline between the father and the son. I like the idea of it. I wish there was a resolution for it, though.
Okay. And I love the cinematography. I love the art. I love the potential of the story that I didn't actually get. I love the relationship between him and his lady and him and his son. I love the style of it. I love the choices that it made with merging the artwork with real life. The transitions and stuff was really cool. I wish it was a stronger movie, but those things, it's a beautiful movie to look at. It made me understand and glad not to be in the art game, and it made me miss the art game at the same time, because the stuff with just the galleries and the pieces on the wall and that solitude with you and that art speaking to you and just taking those moments, that kind of stuff I miss. So that was kind of like, it's a beautiful love letter to art.
I'm sure. I would definitely say I walked away feeling like I got to do something. You know what I mean? Like, I got to do something. You know what I mean? I got to
punch a wall.
Get back to it. No, pull out my paints and my brush. That.
And then stab somebody with the paintbrush?
Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. Not yet. No, that was. It made me interested in the art. Like, I walked away feeling like I want to see this person's work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So maybe there'll be an exhibit of that.
Yeah, I'm sure, and I hope this does inspire for more shows and stuff of his, because he's famous artist, and those is actually his work that he has in the featured in the film. So that's really cool. It's definitely a great showcase of his artwork.
I want to say that I probably have seen his work before. I'm trying to remember. And if it wasn't his, it was someone similar,
right?
To him when I went to the portrait gallery in DC. They had paintings that were silhouettes kind of cut out, similar to how he did in the end when he cut that piece out. So I don't know if it was the same artist, but I had seen something similar before.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell, because sometimes artists kind of use some of the same kind of stuff. Because I remember kind of seeing artwork with kind of being whited out before too. And like I said, I can't remember if it was him or something similar. So you never really know. But it's almost like songs. You can't help but hit some of the same notes. Even if you've never seen somebody else's work, some stuff is going to just it's just out there. It's in the air, and we're just grabbing at inspiration and ideas. And sometimes we grab the same ones. So some people go in there and just be straight stealing and biting people's work, but then there are definitely happy accidents where you just kind of come across the same kind of theme and same kind of process and stuff. So that's just going to happen. But Only thing that makes it different is, you being authentic and that's shining through the actual art. Because sometimes people think it's what you're putting on the canvas, but really it's what you kind of putting in there from you. And it always makes it look different. Even if it technically would be the same as somebody else's, yours shine because of you. And that's always the truth of it. So if that's what you're making it and creating it with, then that's going to be to your benefit, because that's what's going to show up at the end when the viewer sees it and connects to it. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah.
All right. So with that was Jay and Sebrenia discussing the movie. I guess it's kind of elusive movie, Exhibiting Forgiveness, not in a theater near you. But I'm sure it'll be streaming soon.
Right.
Right? All right.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Right.
All right. Till next time. Peace.
See ya.